So we have a pretty full schedule. We're going to talk about what cutting the cord is all about. I'd like to review traditional television, cable TV offerings, just so that we level set what the pieces of those are. We'll talk about replacing cable TV with streaming devices and services. And then we'll get to the heart of the matter. How do you save money? Okay. And then we'll talk about a plan for making it happen so that you can do it incrementally instead of all at once. I'll talk about other things to think about, and then look for other areas to explore savings. That's where I look at phone plans. We're a small crowd here, so if you have questions, just speak up. Okay. So I'm gonna move my my thingy here because it's right in the way. So what cutting the cord means is replacing traditional cable television, your set-top boxes, in favor of streaming services. And we'll go into detail about what that means. But what the considerations are, it can reduce costs if you pay the usual greater than $200 a month for the internet, TV, and landline triple play. Those are the traditional services that they try to sell you. If you already have home internet as part of the plan, cord cutting can make more sense. And are you tired of ads and haggling, like television ads and haggling for a good price? And then the last consideration is, are you willing to be flexible since you're going to have to adapt to a new way of doing things? And I'll explain what all this means. So the traditional items on a cable bill, and I'm sure you love to look at your bills, and I'm convinced that the cable companies make them deliberately difficult to understand so that you don't know what you're really paying. Usually it's an internet, TV, and telephone bundle. There are usually additional packages if you want movies and sports. And then there are equipment costs if you have their router, their set-top boxes, their modems, and then fees and other charges. There's taxes, tags, title, and every darn thing else on the bills. And it's hard for it's not too hard for a cable bill to go over $200 a month. When I cut my cord in 2019 or 18 rather, my cable bill was about $240 a month. Okay, so going over what the offerings are. If you're a Fios customer, and I'm covering Fios and Xfinity because those are the big carriers in our area. There are others, but these are the big two. So if you have Verizon, you have something. They're running fiber optic lines down the street, and they're connected to something somewhere in your house. In my case, it's in the basement. There's something called an optical network terminal, which is in your basement, and the line comes from the street into this box. And you don't rent this thing; they give it to you because it's needed to run into your house. Now, out of the ONT, you have the traditional, that little thin telephone plug called an RJ11 can go into your phone, and then you have what's called an RJ45, which is the network line, into your router. And then from the router to your set-top box is usually a traditional coax cable, those things you used to screw into the back of your television. and those go to a set-top box. So these are the main components of what Verizon offers you. And then the router has wired hookups or wireless hookups, and that's where your computers, mobile devices, and what IoT means is Internet of Things. That's a generic term for your cameras and your Ring doorbells. My wife and I just got a new LG washer dryer that's internet connected, believe it or not.
Oh my God.
Yeah, they talk to our phone and tell us when the load's done, right?
Oh boy.
Oh yeah. And then your television is hooked to your set-top box through what's called an HDMI cable, which stands for High Definition Media Interface. That's that big flat cable that plugs into the back of your TV, and all the video signal and sound goes through that. So this is a Verizon setup. If you have Verizon Fios, this is what's in your home. With Comcast, it's a tiny bit different. Xfinity runs coax cable down the street. Okay, that's that cable with a little wire in it. And that goes to something called a cable modem, which is in your house. And you usually rent these from Comcast. And then the cable modem talks to a router. Now, more recently, Comcast has been combining the cable modem and router into one box. What it used to be is you had two separate boxes. Then that router has an RJ11 for your phone and a coax cable for your set-top box. And then again, it has an RJ45 network cable plug or Wi-Fi to hook to your computers. And again, the set-top box hooks into your television. Now, with most of these systems, if you have multiple televisions in your house, you can have multiple set-top boxes, and you're usually renting each of those. Okay, so what are the pros of traditional offerings? There's one-stop shopping. You go to Xfinity, you go to Fios, you say, sell me stuff, okay? Most of us, as a matter of fact, all of us are familiar with the technology, channel guides, landlines, and all that stuff, okay? And there's a single point of tech support with however good it or bad it may be, there's one phone number that you call, okay? The cons are it can be very expensive, usually because you're buying services that you may not need or want, like a phone landline. Most people, there are a lot of people that still have them. Most people don't need them. The worst part is after your contract period is up, it's called let's make a deal. Because the vendors do not reward loyalty, they reward new business. So that's where you have to play games and threaten them at the end so that you can get a decent deal. So that's kind of the traditional, that's kind of the architecture of a traditional service, the billing of a traditional service, and the pros and cons. Okay, so jumping into the guts of what we want to talk about, which is replacing cable TV with streaming devices and services. So you are going to need two things to start with. You are going to need the internet access from your ISP, and that's going to be cable modem from Verizon or an ONT from Verizon and a router, okay? Which you can, we'll talk about buying your own hardware at the end of this. And you're going to need a streaming device for each television that you want to hook this to. These are examples of the devices. I put the one that I use up top. It's called Roku. The reason I like Roku is they are not owned by any of the major services. They're an independent company. Chromecast is owned by Google. Apple TV owns the whole Apple franchise, obviously. Amazon owns their Fire Sticks. And then there are others that are associated with the Android world and something called Android TV, which, and some examples of those are the NVIDIA Shield.
Charlie, Charlie, are these the monthly cost, or is
No, you buy them and they're yours.
Oh, okay.
Okay, for example, I bought
Roku.
I have 4 televisions in the house, and I bought 4 Rokus for a grand total of about $200. And once you buy them, they're yours.
Okay.
Okay, and so and that's true of any of these devices. You don't rent them, you buy them.
Charlie, do you have to update these? Like
Yes.
a Garmin kind of thing where you have to update it?
Yeah, these have automatic software updates in them. So with my Rokus, I keep mine running all the time and they update themselves. It's like really, really easy.
Charlie, are you going to talk about smart TVs?
Well, yes, and I was not going to spend a bunch of time on it, but here's my take on smart televisions. There are 2 pieces to a smart TV: the TV and the smart. Okay, so TVs last a long time. Okay, that now, if you're a videophile and you have to have an 80-inch, OLED television so you feel like you're there, that's fine. I don't. I still have a Sony Bravia television from when they first came out with HDMI, and which was about 15 years ago. And mine works great. And so you have the TV and then you have the device built into the TV. Well, here's the problem with smart TVs. The smart device in the TV is going to become obsolete well before the TV. So I don't recommend smart televisions. I recommend buying a good TV and a good streaming device separately, because within 5 or 6 years, you're probably going to want to replace that streaming device anyway. Okay, yeah. Of course, the television people would say, oh, it's so easy. You have all this stuff in there. Yep. It's great for about 5 years. Then they deprecate the device that's in there. They say, okay, we're sorry, we're not going to support this thing anymore. And then you're buying a smart streaming device anyway. Okay. So Verizon, so you need the devices. Then going to the diagram I had before with Verizon, now it looks like this. You have your ONT, you have a router, and then rather than having their set-top boxes and other devices, you have your streaming stuff. Okay, so it's simplified. Now notice I take the landline out of the picture, and I'll talk about what you can do to get rid of your landline. And I'm assuming, this may or may not be a fair thing to assume, but I'm assuming as part of cutting the cord, people are going to want to get rid of their landlines. Okay, so you have the ONT, the router. You still have all your devices through Wi-Fi or wired, and then the router talks to the streaming device through Wi-Fi, and then it's hooked into your television via the HDMI port. And the streaming devices come with a remote of their own. Okay. And if we go to the Comcast picture, it's very similar, but you have a cable modem and a router. But now your streaming device is talking to your router via Wi-Fi, which in turn talks to your television. So that's the difference between what you're going to own. Like I said, the issue which Krishna raised, you're going to own your own streaming device versus renting. Something that I will say is with both Verizon and Comcast, because their set-top boxes talk to their routers through the coax cable. If you have their set-top boxes, you're required to have their routers. If you don't need their set-top boxes, you don't need their routers anymore. And we'll talk about that. So once you have your devices, then you're going to need your services. And the first thing I want to talk about that most of us are going to want to have is, how do I get my local television channels? Okay, well, any one of these services, YouTube TV, Hulu plus Live TV, Fubo TV, and Sling TV, they all support your local channels. A matter of fact, I've taken my Roku devices on vacations and plug them into the televisions at the shore house. And when I log into YouTube TV on the Roku, it realizes that I'm not in Pennsylvania anymore and gives me access to all the local channels there. It's like really crazy how smart they are. So this is the first thing that if you want local television, similar to what like the ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, and there's a whole slew of other channels that you get. You are going to want to purchase one of these services. I started with Hulu, and then I changed to YouTube for a number of reasons. I just liked it more, but I found that Hulu has caught up. Now, one thing I will say, YouTube is owned by Google. Hulu is now owned by Disney. And I don't know who owns the other ones, but there is some consolidation in the market where the large media companies are buying up these streaming firms. Okay, so that's how you get your local channels, which usually include sports.
So you get the ESPN, all the NFL sports and stuff?
Most of them offer most of the channels. That's where you need, we'll talk about a plan for figuring out what the best one is for you, but what the first thing as part of that plan is to look at what you watch now and make some notes and say, okay, this I watch this on this channel, that on that channel. Then you find a streaming channel that has all or most of the channels that you watch. Okay. Then there's movies. Well, most of us, or I'm assuming that most of us pay for Amazon Prime shipping. Okay. What you may or may not know is with that, whatever $100 and some per year, you also get rights to Amazon Prime, which is their video streaming service. So that's almost a freebie if you're already using Prime shipping. Netflix is the venerable movie streaming channel, and then things like Hulu started their life as a streaming channel, so that when you go to Hulu plus Live TV, you get their streaming too. So this is typically how you get movie channels. One thing I will say, many of these devices have free content. For instance, there's what's called the Roku channel on Roku, and it's all free content with ads. Okay, and we can talk a little more about that later. Then there's the specialty stuff. So there's, for those of us that have grandchildren, and having our grandchildren who watch Frozen over and over and over, or the new Frozen is Encanto, the latest Disney movie, which my granddaughter watches continuously. Disney Plus is like $8 per month. If you're, for instance, a Star Trek fan like I am, all of the Star Trek content has been consolidated on the Paramount Plus channel, which is also CBS. So there's specialty channels that you can look for. And like I said, Disney is Disney, Pixar, Marvel, Star Wars, and all that stuff. Okay.
Charlie,
Yep.
Not to beat it to death, but to get back to the smart TVs, if you've got half of these things on your smart TV, do you think it's worth going out to buy them now or just wait till they become obsolete?
Well, if you already have a smart TV, I would recommend that you use it, assuming it's a reasonably recent smart television.
Yeah.
The problem is all these devices are computers, and computer technology moves forward. So as you move forward, you're going to notice that the streaming capability of your smart television feels slower and slower year after year. That's the way it works. So if you have a smart TV, use it. If you don't have one, I don't recommend getting it. I recommend a streaming device. Okay. All right.
Charlie, what I hear you saying then, just to recap, so I understand, is that if you have a smart TV, you recommend using it now. When you start getting degraded service, then you would go to one of the devices and plug it in.
Sure. Yes.
TV hasn't. Okay. All right.
Yeah. And if you already have an older smart television, I'd recommend getting a streaming device. They aren't that expensive.
Right.
They're actually very, very inexpensive for what they do. Okay. All right. And then there's a whole bunch of free content out there. There's Peacock streaming, which is CBS, and I think we're all old enough to remember that CBS's logo was a peacock, so that's why they called it that. There's Pluto TV, Roku channel. There's a whole bunch of them that usually come with the streaming device. So, like I said, there's paid content to get local TV channels. There's movies. There's specialty, and there's a ton of free stuff out there. Okay, so how does it work? How do you typically set up a streaming service? Well, if you have a Roku, for example, you would go on your computer to the Roku website, and the first thing you would do is register for a free account with Roku. Then you plug in your Roku device into your television. There's a little power cord for it, and you fire it up. And the first thing it's going to ask you to do is log in with your Roku account. Now, if it's Amazon, if it's Apple, if it's Chromecast, they're all going to use Google or Apple or Amazon as your log. I'm just using Roku as an example because that's what I have. Then you find the service that you want. So I have up at the top of the screen, Hulu, and you go to their website and you say, okay, I want to buy the Hulu streaming service. and you go to the website and you register for it and you give them your credit card. There's no haggling over prices. There's no let's make a deal. You cancel when you want to cancel. It's pretty amazing how easy it is. So then you go back to your device, whether it's your Chromecast, your Apple TV, your Roku, and you go to their channel store and you install the app that you want. And that installation process is free. They're not charging you by the app. So if I wanted to go to the Disney, as you can see on the Roku screen, I'd go into their channel store, I would install the Disney app and then fire it up. And then usually what happens to activate the device is it gives you a code on your television screen. You log in with your computer to Disney Plus, or in this case, it's public broadcast, and you type that code in at pbs.org/activate, and then by magic, it activates the app on your Roku, and you're all set. And most of the apps follow the same process. So once you do it once, you'll go, oh, okay, this is not hard. All right. So that's the typical process for activating on the device. So what are the pros of cord cutting? Well, you pretty much choose only what you want. There's multi-room viewing for the cost of the streaming device. So when you have set-top boxes in every room in your house with cable, with Fios or Comcast, you can usually pause a program on one set-top box and then move into the bedroom and fire up your set-top box and pick up where you left off. That's a feature of cable TV that you usually pay extra for. This comes pretty much standard with these streaming services. For example, with YouTube TV and Hulu, they come with a DVR, a cloud-based DVR, where you can record your programs.
Michelle?
Yeah, hello? Did someone have a question? No, okay. You can cancel your services at any time. So if you sign up for Hulu, and the good news is almost all of these have a free trial that's usually 2 weeks. So you sign up, you say, I don't really like this. You just cancel immediately and you install another service and register for the service and start it. You can literally switch from Hulu plus live TV to YouTube TV in like 5 minutes. And there's no let's make a deal. Their price is their price. And many services allow you to pause them when you're not in use. Like say, you're going to take a month-long cruise to the Caribbean and you're not going to be home. You can log on to the YouTube TV site and say, pause my service. And you won't pay for it while it's paused. It's actually kind of nice. Here's the downside. You're going to have to learn to use a Chromecast or an Apple TV or a Roku, and it's different than a Verizon set-top box. There's a new TV watching paradigm. With cable, you have channels and programs, and you're well aware of how to navigate the channel guide and how to specify a program to be recorded. With streaming, it's streaming channels and device and programs. So if you want to record something on Fox Television, you go to YouTube TV and record it. But if you want to watch the latest Disney show, you have to go to the Disney app and do that. Okay, so it's a little different, and it takes a little getting used to. it's not one-stop shopping or single point of tech support. You have multiple devices. You have your cable provider, your streaming device, and all the services that you're going to use. Now, there's not much tech support, if any, that you really need. And then the other issue that you can have is streaming licensing conflicts. Let me give you an example. YouTube TV carries ABC, ESPN, and those are all owned by Disney. Okay, so YouTube had a licensing conflict with Disney, and they took it right to the line, right to the wire, and the licensing agreement expired, and YouTube TV turned off Disney everything. So for about 2 days, while they were putting their boxing gloves on, we'd go into our YouTube television and there was no local ABC channel. Well, that only lasted a day or two, and it almost never happens. It just happened this past fall for the first time that I saw it. But just understand that because Google owns this and Disney owns that and Amazon owns this, sometimes they can fight over content. There's also what I call fragmentation of content. For example, with Star Trek, all the Star Trek programs used to be run on Amazon Prime and Netflix. Well, Paramount's gotten greedy, and they're taking their content off of the other channels, and they're putting them on their own Paramount Plus channel and then making you pay for it. So that type of stuff is happening too. So streaming isn't a panacea. There is stuff that you have to think about, but as you will see, you are going to save bucks. Okay, so that leads us to how do you save money? And it's relatively straightforward. The only thing you need from your internet service provider is the internet service. So rather than having cable boxes and phone lines and phone services, you would only have internet. And that's all that I have from Verizon. You rent fewer devices, and you can buy most of them if you wish. So having a Verizon set-top box or an Xfinity set-top box tied you to their routers and modems because they knew how to talk to the set-top boxes. If you don't need their set-top boxes, you don't need their routers. So, for instance, the standard, there's a standard called DOCSIS 3.0, which is the cable modem standard, and you can go out on Amazon and buy a cable modem that you own for $50 to $150, and then use that with Xfinity, and they will support it and they won't charge you for it. And then routers are $90 and up, depending upon what the features are, and you only buy them once. And then streaming devices, like I said, on average are about $50 per, and you own them. So once you buy these things, you aren't paying a monthly fee. Streaming services can be cheaper in aggregate than a cable service. With cable, you're getting it all in one place, and HBO, for instance, is a channel. With streaming, you would buy your local TV streamer. If you want HBO, you buy the HBO app, and you pay for that all piecemeal. But when you add it all up, it's usually cheaper than cable. So this looks like an eye chart, but this is how I figured things out. Down the side in yellow are all the services that I had or was thinking about buying. And notice I included my security system in my house. I had a system called Advent. And which with all my smoke detectors and all that stuff, as well as my television. And then I looked at the various services. Now this goes back to 2018, and you'll notice these streaming services have become more expensive. Hulu was $43.99 when I first bought it. Now it's $60, as is YouTube TV and other things. So what I did is on the current services, I added all the current services that I had, and I had a monthly total. And mine was about $269 per month for everything that I had, including my monitoring service for my home's security system. Then I went over and I looked at Hulu, back at the time, PS View, and then Dish TV. These were the ones that were available then. And I added up all those costs with all the streaming channels that I would need to get what I have now. And then down at the bottom, I had the totals, I had my monthly savings, and then I had my annual savings for each of those. And then down at the bottom, I had the hardware that I was buying to replace the other pieces. So I bought 4 Roku streaming sticks, and I replaced my Advent home security system with a Ring system, a self-installed Ring system, which was very easy to install. And so the total hardware was $568. And then the last line is the time in months to recover the hardware costs. So how much the savings would get me before the hardware paid for itself. And you can tell it was like 5 months prior that it would take me to recover the cost in hardware. The reason I replaced the home monitoring system is because it required that I have a landline, and they wanted a small fortune to put a cellular system onto my home monitoring system. And I said, this is crazy. And I got a home install Ring security system that has its own cellular backup and talks through my Wi-Fi. So I just replaced the whole thing. So this is an example of how I thought about it. What's my monthly savings? What's my annual savings? What's the cost to recover the cost of hardware? What's not included in here are things I did to my cell phone plans, which I'll talk about later. When everything was said and done, I was close to $2,000 per year in savings with everything, my home security system, my cutting the cord, and my cell phone plans. Okay, so if you want to decide to move forward on this, how do you do it? Well, first thing you want to do is document your current costs. That's what I did with my little spreadsheet. Then what I did, so my wife watches more television channels than I do. I watch more streaming than she does. So the first thing I said is I asked her to sit down and look at all the shows she records. Now, yeah, she probably wouldn't be too happy with me showing you this, but she recorded Big Brother, Survivor, The Amazing Race, Dr. Phil, The View. I mean, these are all the things that we were recording, okay? So I went through, and that was the cable channel above it. So Big Brother is on CBS, and it was channel 503 on FiOS. And I said, okay, where can I get this? Well, Hulu was one of the places I could get it. She watched a show on National Geographic called Genius. Well, the Hulu doesn't carry the National Geographic channel, but Prime does. So she'd have to use Prime. And then for PBS, we were watching the Victoria series on Masterpiece Theater. You have to go to the PBS application for that. And that was available as an application on our Roku. So this is part of the plan, is to look at what you watch, to go through what you watch and document it. Say, oh, I watched this, I record this, and then go to the streaming services and say, where do I get these? And that's how you decide upon which streaming services you're going to need to buy. In my case, I have YouTube TV, I have Prime, I have Netflix, I have Paramount, I have Disney. That's pretty much it. And then you decide upon and buy one streaming device. I don't care which one, they all work. My own preference is Roku. I have children that have Fire Sticks and Chromecasts. They all work. And then I did a pilot with my wife. So I got a Hulu TV trial. I plugged the Roku in and I set it up for her. And I said, try this for 2 weeks and tell me what you think. And she did. And after 2 weeks, she said, I'm fine with this. So we canceled our cable services and went with streaming. And I really urge you to do your own cost analysis. Because really what this is about is, saving money. And if you're not going to save money, then why go to the bother? One thing I will say is most of these services are also available for viewing on any other device you may own. So, for example, if I want to watch my most recent Star Trek Discovery episode, I can set it up on my iPad and watch it while I'm doing some work on my computer. It's like really nice. So most of the streaming services also work on any other devices you have, like phones, iPads, computers, or anything else.
Is there any, Charlie, one quick question.
Yep.
Did you have any comments regarding quality of these things? I mean, with the cable and without cable?
Well, that's one of the reasons we switched from Hulu to YouTube TV. Originally, Hulu was very good, and then they were growing at a fairly quick, their viewership was growing at a very quick rate, and they weren't keeping up with bandwidth. So when you switched to a channel, it was spending too much time, in my mind, buffering. You'd switch to a channel and you'd get a little wheel spinning. And it's like, wait a minute. So it wasn't instantaneous like you were used to with cable. And then my stepson said, well, YouTube TV has surpassed Hulu. So we switched in about 10 minutes. and went to YouTube TV and left Hulu in the dust. Now, in fairness, when that episode happened where YouTube and Disney had a squabble, and it looked like we weren't going to get the ABC channels back, I switched back to Hulu for a few days. And sure enough, they had caught up. So, you know, that's the nice part about the streaming channels. You can switch. There's no obligation and there's no additional cost.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there is on some of the things, depending on the speed of your internet, there can be a little bit of buffering when you first activate a channel, when you switch to a channel. And I'm going to talk to you about how to know what internet speed to get. Okay. All right. First thing I want to talk about is this all assumes that you're going to do away with your landline. Okay. So in most, some people, when they use their cell phone in their home, their biggest complaint is that they don't have a good signal. They say, "Oh, I've only got one bar on my cell phone in my house. It sucks." And that's why a lot of people keep landlines. Well, there's a solution to that comes with the major phone carriers. It's called Wi-Fi calling, and it's supported by every modern phone. So what Wi-Fi calling does is you switch on Wi-Fi calling, and when you're connected to a compatible Wi-Fi network, it will route your phone calls through your Wi-Fi rather than through the cellular network, which means you always get a good signal. Okay, I have Verizon Fios at my house, and my phones and my carrier, I have Verizon. You don't have to have Verizon Wi-Fi to have a Verizon phone use Wi-Fi calling. You can have Xfinity and Wi-Fi, and Verizon Wi-Fi calling works just fine for it. But you turn on Wi-Fi calling, and in your house, it'll route all your incoming and outgoing phone calls go through your Wi-Fi, not through the cellular radio on your phone. So this is the thing I recommend if you're gonna get rid of your landline like we did, is to make sure that you can use Wi-Fi calling, because all of a sudden you're dependent on your cell phone. Okay, and this works really, really well. Prius, you raised your hand. Is everything okay?
Yes, I wanted to add to this landline business, and there is a device called Magicjack. I think it is like $50 for the device, and then it is $12 a year, or less than $20 a year, and you get a landline. And I mean, not a landline, but a separate phone number. You do get it with the internet. And one of the benefits of that device is you plug it into the internet somewhere, and then you can plug in your regular phone if you wish to, or have the phone number directed to your cell phone.
Okay.
However, when you are in other countries, you carry this with you, and if you have a Wi-Fi connection to the device, then you can call anybody on the US number for free.
Reyes, can you keep your phone number?
Yes, you can. And there is a very minimal fee for transferring your phone number to that.
What's the name of that?
Magicjack.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
They're the names of the dogs of the founder.
Yeah, that's been around for quite a while.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Okay. All right. The other thing I wanted is if a lot of you are like me, you may have an older home security system that counts on you having a landline to dial out to the service. So the approach I took was to replace my older system with a newer system. And the big names are Ring, Simply Safe, and Wise. The Ring system I bought included door sensors, carbon monoxide smoke sensors, motion sensors, and it was all self-installed, battery operated, and wireless. And they use these little 3-year lithium batteries and all the devices. So I installed my own system, and my old system cost over $500 a year to monitor. Then they wanted extra money if I wanted to add a cellular backup to get rid of the landline. The Ring system cost me $360 in hardware. Then it costs $100 a year to monitor. If you already have a Ring doorbell and you pay that $100 fee so your videos can get stored on their site, that $100 fee is the same $100 fee that covers Ring alarm monitoring. So if you already have a Ring system that you're paying for, that fee will also cover the cost of the monitoring to the central office. Okay, that's that on the, okay. Just, this is just a little education on choosing cable over a fiber optic system. Cable is more widely available. It can be less expensive. That's Xfinity, Comcast, Optimum RX, RCN, all those. It's slower because it's running over copper, and it's variable bandwidth. And what I mean by that is they advertise a service. They'll say you're getting gigabit speed, but if you're like me and you like to monitor the bandwidth to know what you're getting, because it's variable bandwidth and it's slower over copper, when all the kids come home from school at 3:30, you can watch the bandwidth drop because they're all getting online. And it's susceptible to electrical issues on the way to your house. So the copper cables being run on the power lines are drawing power from the street. So if you have a power outage on your street, your cable goes down too. With a fiber optic system like Verizon, they're not as widely available. They can be a little more expensive. However, the bandwidth you get is faster and more reliable. When they say you get gigabit service, that's what you get all the time. And it does not rely upon electricity on the way to your house. So as long as your house has power and the central office that they're running out of has power, your connection works. We have a generator on our house because the power goes out in our little 14 home area often, unfortunately. And just so long as that generator is running, my Verizon Fios runs too. So I'm a little biased toward Fios, just a little. Okay, what internet speed do I need? This is the big question. So Verizon prices start at $40 a month for 200 gig service, for 200 megabit service, and goes up to about 90 for what they call gigabit service, but it's really about 800 megabit service. Mega, and what the numbers mean is it's megabits per second, not megabytes per second. So you take the megabits per second, you divide by 8 to get the megabytes per second. Not that that matters, but it's a source of confusion. So the general rule is if you're doing web surfing, email, social networking, and a moderate amount of video, 25 meg service will do well if anybody offers that level of service anymore. If you are running gaming or 4K video streaming, you typically want 50 to 100 meg service, or more than 5, you want something higher. I actually run gig service because I'm a nerd. So that's all. But I had 300 meg service and it worked fine. Most people only have their phones, a couple computers hooked to it, so they don't need lots. I have a lot more hooked to them. Okay, all right. So some other ways that you can save money is you can buy some of the devices. So you can buy your own cable modem for, not from Xfinity, but use it with it. A cable modem converts the cable signal to a network interface. You're permitted to buy these and use them. The cost for a gigabit capable cable modem is only $159. This is the industry standard. And a matter of fact, to prove that Xfinity supports them, there are links to their website telling what devices they support and how to activate them, which I'll send this stuff out. You can also buy a router. If a router takes the network signal from either the ONT or the cable modem and turns it into a wired and wireless signal for your house. There are traditional routers for smaller homes. Common brands are Netgear, Asus, TP-Link, and Linksys. And that's the thing at the top is an Asus router. That's kind of what they look like. They look like this thing with antennas on it. And they usually cost $100 to $300, depending upon what they do. Or for larger homes, and this is what I have, our house is it's not a big house, but it's spread out a bit. There's something called a mesh router, which is a router with multiple nodes that you put nodes throughout the house, and then the nodes talk to each other. And they spread the signal out evenly throughout the entire house. I have a Google model, and they're typically $150 to $300 that will cover like a 3,000 square foot house. The only thing, yep.
I got to ask you a rookie question.
Yep.
When I threatened to quit, of course, Verizon last time and went to gigabit service, they gave me the router. But where is the modem? Because the only
well, do you have Xfinity or okay? FiOS. Then somewhere in your house, there's something called an optical network terminal. It's a white box screwed on your wall somewhere.
Oh, big white box?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in the garage. Okay.
That's their ONT. Yep.
You have to buy that?
No, they give that to you as part of the service.
So I really don't have a physical router.
No, you do modem. Have
a physical modem.
In technical terms, the ONT is the fiber optic modem.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
All right, and just some Wi-Fi jargon if you want to buy your own routers. It used to be, you used to have these goofy 802.11 GNACAX. There were all these jargony standards. And a couple of years ago, they standardized it. So there's Wi-Fi 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay. And they will now say that my router is Wi-Fi 5 compatible. Okay. And all it has to do with is what the standards it supports and the maximum speed. And all the routers are backward compatible with the older standards. So a Wi-Fi 5 router will support Wi-Fi 3 devices. Okay, so you can see the speed from this chart, and that's the maximum speed supported by the protocol. The other jargon is your SSID. That's your network name. So that's the thing when you want to connect to your network that you see on your phone that you click on and then put a passcode in. The passcode is the password for your network. So this is kind of the 50,000 foot view of Wi-Fi jargon and things that you really have to know to be a savvy consumer of these things. Yep.
This summer when I moved here and I got we've got Xfinity, so I bought a combination modem and router.
Yep.
For about $150.
Yep.
This is a DOCSIS 3.1. Is that a higher or lower?
That is the modem standard. So DOCSIS 3.1 is the most recent standard, and that router will the modem built in with that router will support the Xfinity gig speeds. Yep.
Yeah, I was trying to get to one of the better ones, and I was surprised.
And it's cheap.
Yeah. The other, there's one other step on this thing is for my sister lives in Wesley, and so she has a modem that goes one step further and has the VoIP for a landline associated with it.
Right.
So she gets her landline phone essentially through the internet as well, through
there's all sorts of combinations that you can buy. So, yep. Okay, so moving on to other areas to explore. So I wanted to talk a little about your phone plans, because these are also to some people, a lot of people, they're like a mystery. So things to check your mobile phone plan for is if you're paying for the devices. So they make it so easy to go to Verizon, get the newest phone every 3 years, pay us on a monthly basis for the phone. They usually, when you lease the devices from them, there's also an insurance plan that they make you buy when you lease the phone in case it breaks. Other things is to look at on your plan is if you have a limited data plan where you only get so much data on a monthly basis, it's worthwhile to look at how much you use versus how much you bought. Like, for example, if you have an unlimited plan and you're only using a gigabyte of data per month, then it might be worthwhile for you to look at a plan which has limited data. It's going to be cheaper. So these are things that you need to look at your plan look at your bill rather on a monthly basis and say, oh, I'm only using this much data on a monthly basis. And then there are a lot of plans, and I'll talk a little more about this, have senior discounts, which we love. So for instance, I've been looking at some of the cheaper plans, but right now I have a Verizon unlimited 55 plus loyalty plan with unlimited text, talk, and data for $50 per phone per month. So my entire cell phone bill for my wife and I is about $100 a month, and I'm looking to reduce that, but that's cheaper than it used to be. The other questions are, should I buy my own phone? And there are options for that for an outright purchase where you have no monthly charges. The cons are the prices, the phones can be pricey, and there's a bigger upfront cost. You can go to the monthly installment plan where you kind of rent the phone and you have a higher monthly bill, and oftentimes you have to pay the phone off before they'll allow you to switch carriers. Then there's the leasing plans that I just mentioned, where you regularly upgrade. They're cheaper overall, they're better deals compared to outright purchases, but you don't own your phone at the end of the lease, and you're required to pay a buyout fee to keep that phone. So they're the options for doing it. And then how do you know if it's worth it? Well, you can actually look at the total cost of buying a phone. So with a Verizon monthly installment plan with $29 a month for 24 months, you're paying $700 when everything is all said and done. So the question is it worth it to you to spend the money up front and then you own that phone and keep it longer? Or should you lease because you want a phone every few years? I buy my own phones only because I keep a cell phone about 2 or 3 years, then I hand them down to my children. Then they get our old phones. So I'm paying money to save them some money. So if you buy your own phone, you through a carrier, you get what's called a locked phone. And that phone means that it'll only work with the AT&T or Verizon system. At the end of a plan, if you ever take custody of the phone carriers are required to unlock the phone upon request so that you can then take the phone and put any carrier's SIM in it that you want. And I'll talk about what that means. I buy unlocked phones. So you can go to Samsung and Apple and LG and whoever you want, and you can purchase phones directly from them unlocked, which means that you can attach them to any carrier that you want. So what the process, and just to let you know, in the US, we're unique with this locking mechanism where we go to AT&T or Verizon or Ting or Straight Talk and buy the phone locked to their service. In most parts of the world, you buy the phones unlocked and you buy a plan separately from the carrier, and they give you the SIM to stick in the phone. It's our wonderful capitalist society that comes up with all these creative ways to take money from your pocket. So if you have an unlocked phone and you want to add, switch carriers, you can do that easily. First, you'd find a carrier that meets your needs, and they're all over the web. And I will show you some of the top ones that are out there. You would want to contact the carrier and verify that they support your phone. They'll want the model number and everything. Verify they can transfer your number from your old carrier to the new carrier. And you want to check that they have plans that meet your needs. And I'll talk about what you may need. Then you sign up for a plan. You receive a SIM, which is a little card that's in your phone. Or modern phones have something called an eSIM in them. There's an electronic SIM that's programmable automatically so that they don't have to send you the little chip. And then you follow any activation instructions. A matter of fact, most of the newest phones, the Apple 12s and 13s and the newest Galaxies, have both a SIM slot and an eSIM chip in it. And it's actually possible to have two phone lines coming into one phone. So one through the eSIM, one through a normal SIM. But so that's just a little factoid for what some of the new phones have. If you're thinking about things that switching carriers, you want to ask if they support Wi-Fi calling. Do they support visual voicemail? And what that is, if you have an Apple or an Android phone and you click on a voicemail that you received, in most cases, it's transcribed. They actually give you voice to text so you can read it. That's usually an add-on that you add on to a phone plan. So that's something you want to ask. For example, Straight Talk doesn't support visual voicemail on Apple phones for some dumb reason. I have a brother who has a Straight Talk plan. Do they support Wi-Fi hotspot? So some people, they'll use their phones as what's called a Wi-Fi hotspot. If they're out at a restaurant with their computer and they want to hook their computer to Wi-Fi and there's no Wi-Fi, most phones will let you set up your telephone as a Wi-Fi hotspot using the cellular radio in your phone as a modem to go out to the internet. That's a very common feature on all phones now. If you use that feature, you're going to want to ask your new carrier, do you support Wi-Fi hotspots and what speeds? And if you're an international traveler, you're going to want to know, if I travel internationally, do you have plans for me when I travel? So all of the above are based on whatever needs you happen to have. So the other day, I got the most recent Consumer Reports, which just happened to have ratings of the mobile carriers. So I took photos and pasted them in here of their ratings of the services, and they had a little special on what's best if you're above 55 years old. So matter of fact, I'm looking at some of these lower cost plans like Ting and Mint versus the Verizon plan that I have now. So there are very low cost options for phones, well below what Verizon and AT&T offer.
Can I do it while he's here?
Okay, that's my whirlwind presentation.
This is very helpful.
Charlie, that was great. Thank you.
I do have a question. Am I correct? You got Verizon and you got rid of the landline and cable, that you are therefore not renting any hardware from them?
Say it again, Tony. There's
If you
some noise on the
only get your internet through Verizon, am I correct in understanding that you do not therefore rent any hardware from them?
If they will offer to rent you a router, but you don't need their router. So I used to have a Verizon router. When I cut the cord, I sent their router back and I bought one. And so that's the only thing that you would need with Verizon Fios is your own router.
It's here at 3. I don't know how long it's going to be.
Anything else?
Charlie, I have something to add about this Wi-Fi hotspot. Very recently, I checked with both Verizon and AT&T, and it turns out they both offer it. However, their so-called unlimited plan, they don't. And then there is extra cost to have that Wi-Fi hotspot capability.
Right. And one thing that I'll add, I have the 55 plus unlimited plan with Verizon, and they give you the Wi-Fi hotspot, but they limit it to 2 megabytes per second. So they throttle it back to minimum needs. It's fine if you want to search the internet using the hotspot, but it stinks if you want to stream video through.
Right. And I had checked with Xfinity, and they had even lower speed, like 660 kilobits per second, but there was no extra cost for that.
Right.
And that was good enough to do the office work while traveling in a hotel room or something, and you don't want to use their Wi-Fi and things like those. But for streaming, it wasn't the right thing. That is correct.
Well, something that international travelers do. This is one of the benefits of having eSIMs and unlocked phones. In a lot of airports, you go to Ireland or you go to England or Spain, you'll find kiosks in the airport where you put your money in and they give you a prepaid local phone plan SIM for that area. And you plug it into your phone, and then you are using a super cheap discounted plan in that area. And what I'm told is younger people who travel the world a lot, that's what they do. They're going into the kiosk in wherever, buying a SIM with a local plan, shove it in their phone, tell their friends, this is my phone number for the next week. You know, and save a boatload of money because they happen to have an unlocked phone. So. Anything else?
This Wi-Fi calling.
Yep.
How do you get to that on yourself, on your?
There, I will send you the, hang on. I'll just go back to the screen that had it. I actually had the screenshots. So let me go back here. So on your Apple phone, you go to the phone settings, and there's a setting called activate Wi-Fi calling on this phone. And then under Android, you go to the Wi-Fi preferences, and there's a setting called Wi-Fi calling. Now, if your carrier doesn't support it, you'll turn it on and it'll say, we're sorry, your carrier doesn't support it. So I mean, turning it on, if you don't have it, won't break anything. It'll just tell you, sorry, you know. So yeah. Anybody else?
Charlie, this is very helpful. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah,
A lot
very
of
good.
work.
Thank you, Charlie, very much.
Thanks,
Thanks,
you very
Charlie,
much.
for doing this.
You're very welcome, and I'll send these slides out to the